Okay, this is a continuation of our inquiry into the nature of privacy. And last week, we looked at it specifically from the question of human rights and whether or not privacy is a right and whether or not it can be alienated in exchange for goods and services. Tonight, we are going to take a completely different tact than suggested by the reading, specifically because of what's happened in the past week regarding Facebook. So in a minute, I'm going to give you the opportunity to take a look at this, to quickly read through it. But the essence of the article is that Facebook knew and ignored the impact that their work was having on the lives of people. So go ahead and give this a quick read. And Johannes, when you are ready for more, let me know and I will slide down for you, okay?
Okay, can you scroll down?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, can you scroll down further? And can you scroll down a bit more? And can you scroll down further? And a bit further.
Okay. So let's start by looking at the technology. That's okay, Michael. Welcome. So here's the way it works. You have a single IP address here, and this is what faces the world. This device often has multiple points of connection coming in, and it's designed so that the processor is constantly polling the inputs. It, in quotes, knows which of the front-end servers is currently at capacity. So it will hunt for a free one or one not at maximum capacity and route that to a database server. So for example, when you hit Google, you are hitting a front-end server. That front-end server takes your query and sends it to the back-end database server, which retrieves the record or records, sends them to the front-end server, which sends them out the router and down to you. Am I making sense so far? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. In WordPress, which is what the bulk of the web is, there are two configuration files. Both of these contain the username and password. Let me see if I can get to one of my servers and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, can you see FTP is up? Yes? Are you still seeing my screen?
Yes, I can still see it.
All right, so if we go here, this is what a typical HT access looks like. Each of these modules controls an aspect of how the website works. And down below, everything you need to know about the layout of the site is here. So if you know how to retrieve this file, then you basically have no problem getting into the system. And the same thing is true of the WP config file. Oh, come on. Let's just download this. Let's see, Notepad, there we go. So here you are. So even though this password is encrypted, it's not very difficult to decrypt that password. So if I want to pillage your database in the way that Cambridge Analytics did, which is what you see in the article, If I can find your database file, your configuration file, I can take all your data. And that's what they did. So if you think about the problems we face, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Uh-huh.
I know that the big news story today is like Facebook went down, and you might have addressed this already, but like Facebook went down for like a few hours.
Yep.
And they thought that might be connected to the recent like Cambridge Analytica like leaks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that tied to this system, like that you just explained? Is that the reason?
Yeah. Because if you go back to the way the system is designed,
Mhm.
if this is the router that faces the outside world,
Mhm.
however many front end servers are attached, if you want to take that down, you just trigger a denial of service attack, sometimes referred to as a full-on assault. I had one last week on my site.
Oh wow.
And basically, you just hammer these servers until either this device crashes or these crash. But eventually, you'll wipe the site down.
Mhm. And is all the data lost, or is it just?
No, you just stop the front end servers from working.
Okay, you like short circuit it basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you do that, if you can get through the maze of chaos you've created, then unless the database is extremely secure, you take the database.
Now, is it a problem to have just sort of like such a centralized like power structure? Like in terms of keeping all your like I wasn't just Facebook that went down, it was like Instagram and WhatsApp and all these other things. Like, isn't that a serious problem as well?
Well, your other option is, if this is your incoming router, if each server has both the graphical user interface and the database, now you have a major logistical problem of how to update the database on all these servers in real time.
Mhm.
So it's typically not done that way.
Okay.
All right, make sense?
Yep, for sure.
But if we talk simply in terms of privacy, it begins with the fact that that server, the database server, has to be secure. And that's a huge problem. For example, unless you want to make every transaction a user with permissions, then you have to have, and this, by the way, would be a nightmare, then you have to have operating system level privileges. So if you can bypass the security in the user interface, then you can pretty much take down whatever you want to take down. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes, no?
Yep.
Back in the day, it used to be called getting to ring zero. Which meant that you basically pirated the microcomputer, the processor, in whatever device you were after. And when you did that, you basically had total control of the machine. So in part, what we're seeing is a failure on the back end to protect the database server. And that's a reflection of the fact that the front end servers are not secure either. Last week, when my website was under attack, they kept trying 2 accounts. Neither of which exist because they've both been locked out. So they would try this one. When my security system locked them out, they would change their IP address, try again, or they would try this username. And when they got locked out, they would change the IP address again. And eventually, if your security is not tight, they get in and you're dead. Is this making sense?
Yep.
Okay. Are there questions so far?
No, I think I got it. I got a pretty decent handle on it.
All right. Johannes, are you okay with this?
I'm okay with that.
Terry, you okay?
Oh, I think we lost them. Just the 3 of us right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think she left. We probably got too technical.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. So if we go back to the problem with Facebook, they're constantly harvesting your data. And they can do that in multiple ways. So for example, if I go to one of my servers and I log in, I can look at all the transactions that are occurring on the server at that time. I can look at transactions by user. And since each user is tied to an instance of my graphical user interface, then I can record what they're doing. And I can put that in a database. And you don't even have to know. So because this harvesting is constantly going on, so on 60 Minutes, I'm sorry, on CBS News tonight, they followed up on the 60 Minutes broadcast. And the conclusion was simple. By the end of 3 weeks, a fake person profile created by Facebook was even receiving information about QAnon. So by the end of the 3rd week, any sense of connectivity to any position other than the one they had created for the profile was gone. Completely gone. And this results in silos of information. And we create basically a feedback loop where the longer you're on the system, the more narrow the information that you see becomes. So part of the problem And what Facebook has figured out and go ahead, question.
I have two questions. So one, I just a point of clarification on the statement you made earlier. So they made a sort of like blank slate user, right? Like AI user.
Yep.
And then it sort of naturally ended up on like QAnon conspiracy Facebook.
Yeah.
That's very like well, I guess the big question is how did that even happen? But the more pertinent question here is, so when you say what Facebook figured out, now are we talking about Facebook like as a corporation, as Mark Zuckerberg, or is Facebook as the algorithm, right?
Well, they're the same.
Mhm. Like I guess when
Think of
Vivi's
it
like,
this way.
yeah,
The more that you're on, the more money they make.
yeah,
So the question becomes, okay, how do we keep them a longer time? Well, the answer is by making you more angry, more frustrated, and more filled with hate.
mhm. Yeah, but like specifically what I'm interested in is like, is this something that just sort of developed, like they just had the algorithm that was trying to get people on, or and then it developed naturally, or was this like a specific strategy that was made by a marketing team, or is it kind of like a little bit of both, like chicken or egg?
Well, in some respects, it's chicken or egg,
Okay.
but it doesn't take much to figure out that cortisol and dopamine are intensely addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it, the mother of my children belongs to several groups on Facebook that track terminally ill children.
Mm-hmm.
So while she's not feeling anger, hate, and frustration, you can add to the list so, to oversimplify the algorithm, um, so it becomes a feedback loop. until ultimately you're going to see nothing but conservative material. And the same applies for liberal. The famous line on a lot of sites is, it's really not that complicated. That's why on sites where I can do it, like Spotify, I shut it off. I don't want suggestions. I want you to stay out of my face. Which doesn't mean they're not collecting the data anyway, because they probably are. Do you see the point?
Yes. Just to like tie it back to what we've been talking about, is this kind of like how you said people exist in sort of different paradigms, right? Oh, is this sort of like seeing these ideological paradigms like calcify into reality?
Well, in a very dark way, you can put it that way. It's sort of, if we look at it from more of the moral problem perspective, the goal is to increase revenue. Revenue increases. When people stay on the site more. This is called making it sticky. So if you assume that these are the two primary purposes, or this is your primary purpose and this is how you're going to do it, then it becomes really simple. And the answer to that traditionally has been, and how am I going to build a better user interface? By collecting as much data about you as I can possibly collect. If you think about what that article is saying, no one asked what the impact on society would be. It's all about money. So the question of what should be collected, the question of the impact of all of that, none of it is germane to the conversation anymore. It's all gone. It's all removed. So the idea that Facebook would stop misinformation, that they would stop hate speech, is ridiculous. Because their model is designed for exactly the opposite purpose, to keep you there as long as they can keep you there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Johannes, what do you think?
Yes, I mean they're just there to make money, not to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And as we've said a number of times, because of what happened in the 17th century, the only moral obligation business recognizes is making a profit. Nothing else counts. Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, just keep pitching in, like interrupting. I was actually just going to ask you. I was reading an article before class that's making its rounds on Twitter, and please tell me if this is like getting too off track. But it was in Bloomberg, and one of the things that they were arguing for was in wake of this sort of outage that Facebook and Amazon and companies like these big media companies should actually be given seats at the UN as a way to like increase their accountability to the international community.
I don't think it'll have any impact.
No. Like, as
Nope.
in, you don't think that would actually happen, or do you think it's just that would increase accountability?
I do not think it will increase accountability.
Yeah.
The problem is inherent in the
In the-
capitalist model.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that the Marxist model is any better,
Mhm.
but the model is designed for only one purpose: generate money.
Mhm.
So if that's your starting point, why are you going to be surprised that you end up where we are?
Yeah.
The very algorithm that they're using is a violation of any concept of freedom, of privacy, of choice. It's total manipulation. So, it's like asking a wolf to be kind to the rabbit when it tears the rabbit's head off.
Yeah.
But, part of the other problem, which we've kind of talked about in class, is if we review what we've already said, if we go back to 1800, 84% of the American population lived on farms and was self-sufficient. This is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We know that between 1800 and 1900, there are massive urban migrations. So that by 1900, only 41% of the population now lives on a farm. If you think about the implication of this number, you know who you are. You are closely tied to your family. You will likely grow up, live, and die within 5 to 15 miles of your birthplace. You have strong social ties. And there is a very clear safety net. And the culture in which you live is largely homogenous. As we move to 1900, none of these are true anymore. There is a massive shift in 1960, actually between 1671, where we move to a service-based economy driven by consumption. We know that at the end of the 1950s, one working adult can support a family of 5. We know that by 1973, at this point, we're 173 years into the collapse of the nuclear family, and we're just starting to notice it. No role models, no sense of community, no sense of extended family. We have no idea who we are. And the fact that we spend billions of dollars a year on self-help books is an indication of how screwed up we are. And by the way, the self-help industry didn't exist before 1950. So if I don't have a role model, how do I know what I should be when I grow up? Well, I look to someone my own age who's probably as screwed up as I am, but for some reason, I follow them. And companies begin throwing money at them. And they have larger than life personalities. And I spend my day on Instagram and WhatsApp and TikTok and whatever I need to do because I need my hit of belonging to a community. So is anyone talking about the decline of the family? No. Is anyone seriously looking at why our moral values are broken? No. Is anyone asking why suddenly gender is such a problem? No. It's all here, right in front of us. So if you think about the problem of Instagram, particularly with young girls, and all the evidence suggests that Facebook is well aware of this, but they're not going to do anything about it because it all comes back to the same question. How do I make enough money? How do I make my profits go up next quarter? Total disregard for the welfare of anyone other than the stockholders. But because I don't have a role model, because I've been raised in a morally neutral, sterile environment called a school, because I have no sense of community, no sense of extended family, where else am I going to go? So social media is both making worse and yet symptomatic of the reason why we're screwed up. If you go back to our conversation about Jon Stewart Mill, that's why Jon Stewart Mill is so powerful today. I have no choice but to look at myself. Because I exist in a veritable vacuum. So our society is breaking down, and it's going to continue to do so. And technology, particularly in this case, is making it break down even faster. As I've said before, don't offend me, don't make me think, don't challenge my beliefs. I'll just ghost you or cancel you. And when you think about the impact of ghosting and canceling, who are you going to go home to? There's probably no one there. Or if they are there, they're probably consumed in their own lives, their own social media. And the result is suicide, depression. You can't even be sure you exist.
Um, so what do you say to people? Oh, can you hear me? Dalton?
What do I say to people? What?
So what do you say to people? And I see this argument come up on sort of these big business like Jeff Bezos type people who say, well, it's not our responsibility to act as the parents to these children or to police what people see and what they don't see.
We're
Right.
not asking for them to police anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and ethics in and entrepreneurship today, one of the points I made was that we need to understand that these are not synonymous.
Mhm.
They're not.
Yeah.
And we are attempting in business to argue that they are.
Mhm.
Bezos and company are just as bad as the rest of us because well, you are. You may not be legally responsible, but you are morally responsible. And we're using the claim that legal and moral is the same as a primary way of not being responsible.
Mhm.
If Apple never stopped to think that the first iPhone would result in sexting, I don't know what they were smoking.
Well, I guess
I don't.
I'm kind of like concerned with is like, what if they do know? Like, what if they do know and they say, well, at the end of the day, we don't care. Like, even if we are responsible, even if we do know, because I think at this point it's like, as you're pointing out, like Facebook knows what it's doing, but their basic gist is like, hey, we know this is bad, but we don't really care. And so, how do you respond to that? I mean, I don't agree with what they're doing, but what's the response as someone who's trying to, or just like for a person who wants to change that? What's the response there?
Well,
When, yeah.
I understand your point. And this is where it gets extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if in fact, what was the number they said today? If 6 billion people are on Facebook, your deleting your profile isn't going to matter. It would take a billion people deleting their profiles before they're going to care.
Mm-hmm.
They were fined $5 billion and they wrote a check and moved on. On the one hand, there's no mechanism to make them care because they can simply continue to pay the bill. And if they don't like it, they can move their servers overseas. The servers for my company are in Canada. I can move them anywhere in the world in a couple of hours. So not only am I free not to care, I don't give a rat's ass what you want me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just move my servers.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere there'll be a country that will let me get away with it. So part of the problem is that if Facebook doesn't decide to be moral, we're not going to do anything to fix that. And while I'm extremely concerned about this, I'm concerned about something far more important and far deeper.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get around it. We need to belong. We need intimacy. We need community. We don't get it. So read point number 2. We either take care of our needs or they take care of themselves, and that's what's happening. It's not negotiable. And that's what makes social media so potentially dangerous. So go back to the previous diagram. We have been shredding the nuclear family for 221 years. We've destroyed the extended family. We destroyed any sense of community. Why are we surprised? We have 5 generations of people now who have no sense of what it means to be a functioning adult. We have no concept of gender, no concept of role, no concept of greater good, no sense of identity. We're adrift. So if I get up tomorrow morning feeling particularly feminine, call me she. If in the afternoon I shift the other way and I feel particularly aggressive, well, call me he. I don't like what you're saying. I'm going to ghost you. I don't need to listen to you. There's no future here. And I'm not conservative. I'm telling you what I've seen over the course of my lifetime. I am certainly not advocating a return to the repressive society of the 19th century. But I do know that without intimacy, community, a sense of belonging, a sense that I am in relationship to other people, we're going to shred whatever's left of our culture. We're becoming increasingly dysfunctional. And now I don't have to listen to you anymore. And in fact, the system is designed in such a way that I won't listen to you anymore. So why do we wonder when a gunman can take a rifle, walk into a building, walk into a newspaper and shoot all the people to death? We shouldn't. It's all predictable. So the problem with Facebook is far greater than its lack of moral responsibility. It's the fact that Facebook, MySpace, and all the other places exist because our fundamental human needs are not being met. And instead of stepping back and saying, what's wrong? What happened? We ignore it. Think of it surely in terms of, solely rather, in terms of women. And I've said this before. What better way to objectify you than to convince you that self-objectification is the ultimate act of self-expression. And that's what we're doing. So we don't look at a female on Instagram and go, wow, that's a beautiful body, but that's grossly unnatural. We go, oh my God, I don't look like her. I'm grossly deficient. No one's going to love me. No one's going to care for me. And here we are. Over and over. And the same thing happens for men. We don't know who we are. We don't know who we're supposed to be. Eric Fromm, in his book, Escape from Freedom, argued that the mistake in Western culture is that we equate freedom from limits with true freedom. The irony is it's not freedom at all. It's nothing but chaos. And this is us. And this is the answer. This is why we are where we are. So, as long as we attempt to live in two worlds, 400 years apart, we're not going to fix the problem. We can't deal with this in the 17th century because it didn't exist. But we're not here anymore. We're here. If we're going to deal with the ethical issues associated with technology, we cannot remain behind 400 years. It'll never work. All right. Any last questions?
No, thank you.
Good. Johannes, anything?
No, I have no questions to that.
All right. Did you find my comments helpful?
Yes.
It's a lot to take in, but also it's kind of what we've been experiencing forever now, because it's always how it's been. Companies always been bad.
Yep.
Like everybody has to look out for themselves.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming. It would have been a whole lot more boring if you two weren't here with me. I will mark you both here tonight, and I look forward to talking to you both the next time around. So
Thank
take
you.
care.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.